welcome to QI, where tonight we're looking at everything in the kitchen but the sink. Joining me at the breakfast bar, cooking with gas, Jason Manford. Sharp as a knife, Victoria Wood. Pointless as a spoon, Richard Osman. And I got this fork off Alan Davis. Let's hear your pingers. Jason goes. And Victoria goes. Richard goes. And Alan goes. We're having a kitchen supper tonight. Which of the following do you fancy? Take me through these lovely dishes. They're all real.
Is the buttock tongue Marks and Spencer's buttock tongue?
It's your buttock tongue. Work on tongue. Well, I'd be careful when I say that. If you just take the last three letters off tongue, you get...
Oh, so like a biltong.
Biltong is right. It's a hindquarters tongue, which sounds weird, but that's what it is. Biltong. Have you ever had biltong?
No, I'm vegetarian.
Ah. Meet Alan.
Hold on,
He's a vegetarian
is biltong not vegetarian?
No. It's usually sold as ostrich biltong or dick biltong or something. I know some other animal, but they found in 2013, a very recent study, that 2/3 was incorrectly labelled. So horse biltong turned out to be beef biltong. And you can eat. Disgusting. Revolting idea.
I think if you're eating that, I don't think you have to worry about what animal it's come from. Like, is it...
What is it? The bottom?
It's dried. Well, it's the dried hindquarters, but it's called tongue, I think, because it's the shape of a tongue in the way that it's dried, rather than it comes from a tongue. Biltong, buttock.
So does it have the actual...
The hindquarters, which are buttocks on an animal.
But does it have the arsehole in it?
Not the...
That's in hot dogs, I think.
Yeah, they save that for hot dogs and pork pies. Yeah. So you can have beef, horse, impala, wildebeest, eland, giraffe and kangaroo, biltong, apparently. Wow. Very nice. So that's a good one. We started.
Kleftico, that's on a menu in a Greek restaurant.
Yes, Kleftico, exactly, it does exist. And it was originally called Kleptico, which might give you a hint.
Kleptomaniac?
Kleptomaniac. Kleptos is a thief. And it was anti-Ottoman Empire bandits who lived in the hills. And they made up this dish, so it was named after them. It's a thieves' dish.
It's quite elaborate for a bandit person to be doing.
They were. You should see their soufflés. They were extraordinary. Actually, soufflés brings us all to nun's farts.
When you pop one...
Why specifically a nun's, though? I mean...
Nun's farts smell like soufflé. Keep up. Just giving you that. When he gives you one, grab it.
Take notice. A lot of French dishes have, or indeed European dishes, have their pumpernickel as a devil's fart. Pump, fart, nickel, old Nick. And that's a bread. So they have rude names. And isn't there a cheese which is angel's tits or something like that? You can tell which ones are farting from their pained expressions.
Oh, that's like the Castle Dad's Army on it.
I think out of them all there, I'd say she's definitely farted and the rest don't know yet. Look at the smile. The smile on her face.
That's a massive ball and they all just put their faces through.
Nun's farts are little balls of pastry deep fried and they puff up. Ah. They're also called horse farts or Spanish farts in French. Pets, nun. Pets is fart in French. These days they've disappointingly been renamed as nun's puffs. Or possibly puffs, I don't know. It's hard to tell.
Bishops.
Bishops, yes, exactly. Well, pocket soup. How can you put soup in your pocket?
It's crazy, right?
It is. It's insane. There must be a way.
Yeah.
This actually is soup that has been...
Solidified?
Yes. Reduced
Reduced?
into a sort of... Basically an early version of a stock cube.
Oh, right.
And then you reconstituted them by adding boiling water, as you do with your classic stock
But why
cube.
would you put it in your pocket?
To travel to
Keep your
work?
hands free.
But you know when you leave, like, a fiver in your pocket when you put it in the wash?
Yes.
That'd be awful if you left some pocket soup in your...
The whole wash would come back as consommé. Most unfortunate. Treacle. Treacle. Anti-venereal treacle.
Wouldn't want to lick it off.
You're right.
It sold much better than pro-venereal treacle, didn't it?
Yes. It really did.
Yeah,
The two great treacles.
The word treacle has had an interesting history. It now means...
It used to mean any sort of medicine, didn't it? Or any sort of...
Even without a computer in front of you, you're good. Have you got one hidden under there? No, I'm very impressed. You're absolutely right. A treacle was generally any kind of specific against diseases and things.
Or a term of endearment. Weird.
Treacle. Oh, yes, in EastEnders and that sort of thing, isn't it? All right, treacle.
All right, anti-venereal treacle. That's what we call some of those characters.
Anti-venereal treacle. It's your auntie venereal. That's very cool.
You coming for your cheeks, my dear?
There's someone in America, Veruca's quite a popular name.
Really?
People copy it from Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. They don't know. They don't call Verucas Verucas in America.
Oh, so they don't know it is actually...
They don't know it's a
Veruca
awful
salt.
thing. Yeah.
Brilliant. I'm so pleased.
They don't call chlamydia chlamydia.
Yes.
All you need to do is put it in a popular children's book as a name. Before you know it,
It would be one of the most popular
Barack
names.
Obama will have a daughter called.
Familiar Obama. Which brings us to dog and maggot.
Does it?
Well, it doesn't necessarily. It sounds like rhyming slang for someone of my persuasion.
I was going to go with the ITV show Taggart.
Oh, right. There's been a murder, dog and maggot.
Scotsman in the mist. See what I did there?
Yeah. If I would say hard tack to you, does that mean anything?
Chips biscuits?
Very good. Ship's biscuits are known as hard tack. And there's a famous scene in the battleship Potemkin. Do you remember, if you've ever seen it?
No.
The Great
I'm a
Eisenstein
vegetarian.
movie. That's going to be an answer to a lot of questions. No, I'm a vegetarian. The Potemkin was a ship in which there was a mutiny. And there's a scene of them cracking open the ship's biscuit and the maggots. It's really horrible. And this is a British biscuit called dog because it was the consistency of a dog biscuit. And maggot because it had maggots in it. But it was in the First World War, it was part of the ration.
God, I think I'd rather eat the cutlery. That choice came up. Let's have a chew on this knife, don't worry about it.
I think I'd like with a fork.
You like spoon?
Rather than having all the prongs and a line, why can't they be in a kind of a square shape so you've got the front of...
Do you know, hold that
idea.
thought. Because we might be coming on to that later in the exam.
Wow.
Yes. It might come up. So said it wouldn't come up this term, but it might have come up.
I'll revise that.
Yeah, OK. So that's your dog and maggot. We're left with the kunga cake.
Sounds African.
Very unlikely. It is African, but you're very unlikely to get this.
Is it a cake?
Well, it's...
Is it going to be dung?
It's
Oh,
not
yeah.
dung,
It
no.
sounded like dung.
It's animals, but tiny, weeny animals.
Termites.
Even smaller, actually.
Ants.
Midges.
Oh.
Midges.
Midges.
The midges, they come out from the river in their mating swarms. In such numbers, they gather them and press them into a cake.
How do they gather them?
Well, I guess they're sort of with a net or something,
Good.
something like that.
It's about time they got the Just Desserts, those little stuff.
And they're always talking these days about using all kinds of insects and things for the future of the human race, protein, you know, insects and... No?
No,
Yeah.
I'd...
Do you remember I had an ant on this show once?
I do remember
and
having that.
I got a bit of its sort of carapace, and it was just the whole show. I had it, of course, in the back of my throat. It
I was like that with
disgusting.
Deck.
That's very naughty, indeed. Anyway, there you are. Here's some unusual cutlery. I'd like you to tell me what kind of thing you could eat with them. You've all got some, but I'll start off with the one that you mentioned there. You said with tines...
just invented that.
There you are.
There you
You
go.
see? Isn't it incredible? You mentioned something like it.
That's weird.
Isn't it? It's usage. It's very, very specific. You don't actually handle it yourself because you're so high-born that somebody else feeds you using that. With what on it, though?
Some sort of fruit?
No.
Is it a testicle?
It might include a testicle.
Oh.
Is it a scrotum?
It might include
What
a
else
scrotum.
really includes a testicle, Steve?
The whole schmear.
A whole mammal.
Yes, a whole mammal. Let's just imagine I'm talking to one.
Oh, God.
A comedian?
No, a cannibal. It's the point of human
human.
being.
Oh.
Yours is a reproduction sold as a souvenir item on the island of, or islands of...
White.
Man.
You're more accurate if you said the Isle of Man, I would have thought. We think of the Cannibal Island, it was part of the British Empire. It was-
Oh, Guernsey.
Fiji.
Oh, I might have known.
Yeah, you might have done.
Yeah.
Fiji is the answer. These are Fijian human forks.
Two cannibals are eating someone.
Yes.
And one says, you start the toes, I'll start the head. He says, all right. Halfway through, he says, you all right? He says, yeah, I'm having a ball. He says, you're going too fast. There you go.
Excellent work.
There you go.
Excellent
Cannibal
work.
joke for you.
All right, Adam, can you look and see what other items of cutlery you might have?
Got this one.
That you might recognise.
Once again, it's for,
That looks
clearly for
useful as well.
testicles.
If you did eat meat, it's quite common, reasonably common.
For fish.
Anyone? No?
It looks like it's for force feeding a suffragette.
The foreskin of a suffragette.
No, for force feeding.
I'm so sorry. For force-feeding Emily Davidson.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
right.
That's what Batman used to say, with the foreskin of a suffragette.
Foreskin of a suffragette. Bad man. All for clenching a nose. I'm sure the audience knows. You'd like to shout out? They all know that's for l'escargot, it is for snow.
is it?
You clench the shell and then you use a little winkling fork to get the flesh out. So there you are. And what have you got, Victoria?
I've got that.
Now that is interesting. You've also got a bowl.
I'm sure there's like one in my mum's drawer, or one of them.
Yes.
I've seen that. That's the only one I've seen. Is that
your
the rest on
mum's
the-
drawers.
On my mum's drawers.
It's a
Does it rest
buffet.
on- does it rest on
buffet
a-
spoon.
No, it rests on the side of the
plate,
bowl.
yeah,
the
on
most
the bowl.
useful thing,
Brilliant.
Oh, that's clever.
usually things for this substance are wooden with a sort of dome on the end and grooves around them.
Honey.
Honey. But this is even better for honey because you pour the honey into the
Yeah.
bowl or whatever, keeping it on top of that other bowl.
Yeah.
And then where do you put the spoon without stickiness?
Yeah.
You just simply put it back on.
I think other people have got more cutlery than me.
This, which is a
Very
strange
hard. If you guess that,
spoon with
I'll
holes
give you
in
100
it.
points if you guess what that is specifically for.
Oh, it's for Cocoa Pops, so you get the milk at the bottom. It's a
It
chocolate
would
thing.
work as
It would.
that. It's actually very specifically for terrapins and turtles.
I don't usually eat them.
You're a vegetarian.
Exactly.
Oh, I see.
The flesh is delicious, apparently.
Okay.
The giant turtle, famously.
Aren't they protected,
Or tortoise,
Stephen?
that
You're not
was.
supposed to be
Of
chomping
course,
away
no,
on them.
absolutely not. No, the Ridleys and
Well,
the
why are you
those-
saying we should kill them? And eat
No!
Why are you giving me cutlery to damage
We
territory?
used to.
No, it's a weird thing to say on television that we should eat turtles.
I take it back. No, we definitely shouldn't be killing them, obviously.
But they're delicious.
But there is a special piece of cutlery for them. And
We
apparently
happen
they're
to have some
delicious.
cutlery for them, and they're
Just
delicious.
in case.
And, Jason, what have you got? Oh, now this is interesting. Don't look at your reflection in it. That'll only upset
It wasn't. I was seeing if that was what was unusual.
No.
Oh my God, it's Tom Selleck. All the people.
Have a grip and a twist.
Okay. Oh.
Ah.
It turns. It turns like that.
Yeah.
Is it
All the way.
supposed to-
You can
Oh,
go
all the way.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Oh, and then it just becomes like.
It's broken.
It's a breakable spoon.
Brilliant.
No, but look in the spoon end, the ladle end. It's hollow,
Yeah. Oh, inside there.
so you could fill it with something.
A message.
Hot water.
Oh, I know. Oh, I was going to say turtle blood.
Oh, I see.
You fill it with hot water, and it's a gravy spoon that keeps the gravy nice and warm. Stop it.
like
That's convenient. Richard?
Great idea.
Are we going to have anything that you can eat testicles with?
They may be coming up.
There we go. There we go.
Yeah, now what's
Crack
that?
with that?
Are they holes in the end?
Yeah, little perforations.
You see, you've learnt from your little thing. There are perforations in the ladle itself, in the spoon part itself, the bowl. What about the other end?
It's got a little hole in it.
Ah. So what could you do?
Well,
You could hang
I'm
it.
going to insert it into the backside of a turtle. Just there. Literally just there. And then I think, you tell me if I'm wrong, you squeeze, is that right? You squeeze down in the shell, and out it comes there, then you've essentially got yourself a smoothie. Which is it a turtle blood smoothie maker?
It's so close. If I said the word mate to you, would that mean anything? Have you ever travelled to an area where you drink mate tea? Audience? Argentina and Peru and various other places.
Of course.
It's called mate.
There we go. Got that sorted.
So basically, it does a marvellous job. It stirs the leaves and allows you to drink the tea all in one without needing a strainer.
Oh, like,
Oh, it's
so
a
you-
straw.
so
It's a straw. You suck it up.
Oh, that's so good.
It's an Argentinian mate spoon. Now, what attachment would you expect to find on a Swiss student knife?
A pot noodle opener?
Very good. How many attachments do you think? How many?
12.
12?
40.
One.
Oh, you win. It's 2. Oh, very good. It's only 2. Just
It
2
was
blades
one.
on a student knife.
Yeah,
There
he
is
doesn't
one.
need a corkscrew, does he?
It doesn't really need a corkscrew, no. If it was a British child, yes. Yeah. And you need a little special shot glass for Jaeger bomb. The whole works, basically, for your average British child. Pocket, except for QIBs, pocket knives were originally imported from Germany in the 1890s, but then a Swiss gentleman called Karl Elsener won the contract to make them locally, and every member of the Swiss army had to get one, and considering that was all men were members of the Swiss army, that was a very valuable contract indeed, as you can imagine.
Did people actually get killed by them? Or were they just for cutting ropes and...
I think they were just for general use. I don't think they were for combat, for hand-to-hand combat.
Yeah.
Yeah, you won't want that, will you? Just
Yeah.
wait there a sec, let me get the right one. Corkscrew, for God's sake! Wait there!
It wasn't red, as you can see, it was black with a wooden handle. The screwdrivers so soldiers could actually dismantle their guns. So that was for. Then there was the schoolboy knife and the farmer's knife. His big break came in 1897 with the officer's knife. And that's really when we begin to go into Swiss
you're
Army
talking.
territory. Now you can see there's your classic formation. And they make up to 65 million a year. That's huge. Wow. Well, you've seen some shops which just have a window full of nothing else, don't you?
Yeah.
Getting a big one that's slowly open. I've got one of those. I bought one. Yeah. I bought one for a shop that's going out of business. One of those ones that just opens and closes. It's really good fun. Just plug it in. It's really, I can sit and watch it for hours.
You've not got a television.
Yes, but I'm always on it.
I don't have that channel.
And now, QI.
You... So much better, believe me. Did you know that they produce a Swiss Army fragrance? You'll love the description. The classic is a fresh, aromatic fragrance for men that stands for refinement and vision. It has notes of yuzu, geranium and lavender. It radiates, you could be talking about me here, it radiates a disarming masculinity. But you'll be pleased to know, Victoria, there is one for the ladies. It's for straightforward, uncomplicated women who enjoy asserting their femininity alongside their athleticism.
That's me.
Absolutely.
What, do we know what notes that's got?
Yes, I can tell you the notes. Paraguay tea, cedar and hay.
Oh, all my favourites.
That's what it is.
Hay!
I love
is hay.
hay.
Common? Is it common?
Yeah.
Yes.
Hay, grass, manure,
Yeah.
compost.
Oh, dear. But, as always, the best in multi-bladed knives comes from Norfolk. The best in everything comes from Norfolk, as you know. The Norfolk knife. Not
Is that an army?
I've seen that knife. There is a Norfolk knife, which I think will take your breath away for its beauty and uncomplicated That's going to solve most of your problems, including the problem of having fingers will be solved.
That's amazing.
It is preposterous, isn't it? But it is. That's the Norfolk knife. Well, there you are. So I hope I'm radiating disarming masculinity as we move on to the next question. What's the quickest way to cool down my kitchen?
I'm going to, just because I'd love to get a klaxon sound, is it opening the fridge? Somehow that makes it
Turning on the
hotter,
oven.
doesn't it?
Turning on the oven would not...
Turning on the top of the stove. Put the gas on. Because the
Right.
coolest place in front of a fire is right in front.
Oh, I see what you mean, but that would still warm up the room.
Yeah, all right.
No, don't be cross. It's good that you didn't say turn on the fan, which would have got you a klaxon.
I wasn't going to say
No,
that.
exactly.
Can I just say turn on the fan?
You've gone klaxon now. It is.
So why would opening the fridge?
It's the second law of thermodynamics. The energy you need to create the coolness creates work, and energy and work are basically congruent in physics to heat. And so
Yes,
the
but
back
what
of
if,
a fridge...
what if the motor of my fridge is outside my...
If
because I'm
that were
thinking
the
exactly
case,
that.
yes.
Because you haven't been in my kitchen.
I said my kitchen, though. That was in the question.
I'm so sorry.
In the case of an air conditioner, of course, the back is always outside.
So a fan is just
Yeah, the
cooling
motor
air.
of the fan warms the room.
And what's up with them windows? Are they not open?
Well, that would be a good answer. Exactly.
What about opening the windows?
Yes, that's fine. You might get a point for that.
Why is it so hot in your kitchen? What have you been doing?
What protected species have you been slaughtering?
Boiling terrapins by the dozen. Open a window, Stephen. No, I like it hot and sweaty. Scraping the froth off.
Don't.
Where's my matte spoon?
Now, John Gorrie of Florida was one of the pioneers of refrigeration, and he believed that heat was one of the things that made you ill. And so he would lower huge bags of ice over patients, and the cold air would fall on their faces, and he thought that would help them. Then he went so far as to invent a refrigeration machine. And this outraged the huge industry that towed and transported real ice from Canada and other places into New York and so on. And they had a successful campaign saying that artificial ice didn't work. It wasn't proper ice, and it would never work properly. And he died in poverty.
In the supermarket, there's a bag of... you know, you buy bags of ice.
Yes.
There's one ice called extra slow-melting ice.
What?
I know.
Has it got salt in it?
What could it possibly... And then in the thing it just says, ingredients, water.
But it also,
has
has a best before on it, legally.
It's fantastic, isn't it? So, if you leave the fridge door open, the room will actually get warmer. Which breed of dog makes the best kebab?
You need one with an opposable digit to make any kind of sound.
Hey, very good.
What about a sheepdog?
Whoa!
I was going to say sausage dog, so I'm glad I went with that.
Oh, dear, oh, dear.
What about kebab dog?
There isn't such a dog, fortunately.
There's a shop near me, there's a takeaway near me called Kebabish. And I like it because it sort of sounds like the guy who owns it. Even he doesn't know what's in the meat. What was it? I don't know, just Kebabish.
Well, it's funny to say that because doner kebabs, I mean, have come under scrutiny lately. The average doner has 1,000 calories, half a woman's recommended daily allowance.
Wow.
Even a woman called Donna.
Even a woman called Donna, in fact. The worst have almost 2,000 calories. An average has 98% of the recommended daily allowance of salt and 148% of the recommended daily allowance of saturated fat.
I know reading those out was supposed to put us off, but I could kill for one now.
It did sound a little... All the stuff about saturated fat sounded
Ooh,
delicious.
yeah.
It is, it is.
That just sounds like a bargain. If you're getting 98% of your salt, it means you don't have to... you don't have to get it anywhere else, do you?
call it doner kebab? I mean, because it's Turkish for a spit, generally, going round thing, a rotisserie. Because the standard kebab is like on a skewer, isn't it?
A shish.
A shish. And I never knew you could pull them off the skewer before you ate them. When I was a boy, I was thinking like that, and I go... And then I saw someone just pulling them all off.
That's how the Queen eats them.
Yeah, I'm sure she does. So, do you have dogs?
No, I don't
No.
like things that don't talk.
You don't like things that... I love that
I don't
rule.
like things that don't make jokes.
It's a really good rule.
It
Yeah.
excludes some men, obviously.
Yeah, I can see that as well. Because we are literally speaking about a breed of dog that has since gone out of existence. It's no longer bred and it's become extinct as a breed.
But it used to talk.
No, sorry. We're conflating, unfortunately, here. It was a spit dog, a turn spit dog. It was actually bred...
Spit the dog.
There is one.
Spit the dog.
It's a really cute... It's a cute breed. Look at it. Isn't it cute?
Not cute.
no, it's
Weird.
not.
It's like a Star Wars dog.
Oh, I think it looks lovely. This is a stuffed one in Abergavenny Museum, I ought to say.
The taxidermist has bollocks that right up.
Well,
It's stuffed with feta and vine leaves.
their job was to walk round keeping the roast meat on a spit evenly cooked. They were actually bred for that job. They were inside a wheel, and they turned the wheel, like a hamster in a Ferris wheel. And it worked beautifully well. And on their day off, they would get taken to church and used as foot warmers. That was the life.
Sounds like they went into extinction through choice. I've had enough of this. Come on, dads.
Yes. And Queen Victoria kept retired ones as pets. She actually liked them rather a lot. It's a nice thought, isn't it?
It looks sad.
Well, yeah. It's dead.
Because it's dead.
Yes. There were, in 1765, estimated to be 3,000 turnspit dogs in Bath alone. Not everyone liked them. William Coatsworth of Gateshead wrote that he had got rid of his turnspit to keep the dog from the fire, the wheel out of the way, and the dog prevented from shitting upon everything it could. That's the problem. You don't want poo.
That's Northerners for you.
Who wants the bath alone, anyway?
Yeah, no, we want to do that.
Who wants to bath alone? Oh, what a lovely saying. When did you last bath alone?
I don't bath.
Ah. Please tell me you shower.
I shower.
Good.
I can tell you.
I know. You smell disarming masculinity and hay. Well, that's your answer. Turnspit dogs. They got hot during the working week, and on Sunday were used as foot warmers. Now, when Koreans went into space, what did they take to chow down on? You've got a bowl, Victoria, and
I've got a
you
bowl.
can eat some.
Full,
It
blimey.
is quite a strong smell.
It really is.
They took that into space?
Yeah.
Was that to get rid of it?
It is a bit smelly. It's actually delicious.
Let's hope there's pudding.
Korean astronaut food.
Well, they developed a special breed of it for astronauts.
I think it's got cabbage in it.
It's mostly cabbage. It's almost like a kind of sauerkraut. You can't drop anything in space. You merely release. The point about this food is it is generally reckoned that this food is more celebrated and loved by the Koreans than any food in any other culture is loved by any other culture. It is absolutely their identity.
They've not had a pie in the north.
No, well, believe me, they talk about this food far more. Even the Northerners talk about pies.
In Wigan, you know, on the back of Baker's vans, they've got a sign that says, no pies are left in this van overnight.
That is very good. But if you would name this food, I'd be very impressed because it really is the essence of Korea. They really are obsessed with it. Have you ever heard of it?
No.
It begins with K, which is help. Kimchi is the right answer of the audience. Kimchi, K-I-M-C-H-I.
That's bloody lovely.
It is really good, isn't it? And it's pretty healthy. It's mostly cabbage.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to Korea on holiday.
Yeah. It is genuinely delicious, isn't it? It's quite piquant, quite hot, got a bit of chilli.
Yeah.
It's mostly radish and cabbage. It's very, very simple. But there are lots
I
of
feel
different...
myself becoming more obedient.
Yeah. Finally! At last!
You know what, though?
Tell me.
You know when you want the second one?
Yep.
You don't really.
He's just too... Yeah. They eat 2 million tons of this a year.
Each?
In South Korea. I think that would be... Even that is too much. Some make their own and bury it in a sealed jar over winter. Others have special kimchi refrigerators. When you open the door of them, they eat them. It is quite hot. Yeah. In 2010, they had...
You like kimchi? You always go full.
No.
After that.
No racial stereotyping here, then.
Just cheap laugh, Stephen.
That's racy racism, and you know it.
In 2010, they had a cabbage crop failure, and the price rose by 400%.
Oh.
And they spent millions on the South Korean astronaut who went up into space, and so she could have a kimchi that was bacterially more sound and would survive in space better, because it was absolutely crucial to her well-being as a Korean. And indeed, Chung Il-kwon, when he was president during the Vietnam War, said to President Johnson, who asked if he, when he was away, you're missing Korea, so he said, to be honest, he missed kimchi more than he missed his wife.
Kimchi, the name of his mistress.
Possibly. Anyway, for Koreans, kimchi is literally out of this world. How can you get money out of the King of Scotland? It's a wonderful photograph, isn't it? Well, obviously, he's not the King of Scotland. This is a very early King of Scotland, nearly 1,000 years ago. There he is. He was King David I.
Oh, Dave, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Dave.
Of course, yeah, you see with the,
Wee
the
Davey.
beard now, yeah.
Wee Davey.
Because he didn't always have the beard,
No,
did he? And then he grew it
that's right.
for Movember.
When he was a baby.
It was a tiny, tiny king.
He
Small.
really was. Very, very small.
Can we have some money, King David?
He would reward people, give them a tax rebate if they had good
Shortbread.
Scones.
scones, shortbread.
Deep fried Mars bars.
Table manners?
Say it again.
Table manners?
Is the right answer. He would reward people for their table manners. Immediately took her elbows off. Whoa!
Never know.
Fantastic. Plus 5 points for good table manners. The 12th century King David first of Scotland, yes, according to William of Malmesbury, gave tax rebates for good table manners. Talking of table manners and royalty, which member of the royal family would you least expect to have had terrible table manners?
Queen Victoria.
Queen Victoria.
Victoria.
Yeah. And she was... Jesus.
Was she still of a
When you
generation who
laugh.
thought that blowing off at the end of a meal was a compliment?
No, I don't
I've
think
been using that one for years, you know.
I think
It's a compliment to the chef!
I think you're confusing it with burping.
Oh, God, sorry.
All this time, it's never a compliment to blow off at a table. But there's food.
Unless you're a nun.
Yeah, unless you're a nun.
What's there to do about Maria?
It does look like rather a joyless table.
Which one of those is Queen Victoria, for goodness sake?
Which one of those?
That one, that
Those
Winston
would be
Churchill in
I
drag.
think that would be Edward VII on the right,
No,
wouldn't
no, one of the little boys will be
it?
Edward
Oh, I
the
see
Eighth.
what you mean. It would be his son. Yes, David. It
The
would
second one.
Which one is Colin Firth?
That would be the youngest one on the left, I think. That's Colin Firth. And in the middle is Queen Victoria.
Why is she so, you know...
Joyless.
Yeah.
Well, she was not amused, if you remember, ever since her
Yeah,
husband
no,
died.
you thought once she's at the table with her family, she'd bloody smile.
No, she was...
Brats are so annoying when you're having your brats.
Especially when you have
She's like that.
she was a large woman, and she was only 4'11" high.
Kylie Minogue.
Kylie Minogue.
She stood up there.
No,
12 stone.
but she weighed 12 stone. Is exactly what she weighed.
She had a
Which is
50-inch waist.
50 inch.
Well, her bloomers were 50 inches.
As collected by Norman St. John Stevens. The,
I didn't know
yes, he
that.
did. He collected Victoria's underwear. Literally. Not Victorian, but Victoria's.
And he started the lingerie shop Victoria's Secrets.
Yes.
That's what he sells. I've never been in, but I presume that's what they're selling now.
Presumably it is. The fact is, because she was queen, she got served first at dinner, and she would start eating. And she would get through 14-course dinner in half an hour.
Wow.
And once she'd finished, everyone else had their food taken away.
Brilliant.
And she would just gobble away at incredible speed. Lord Hartington, who was one of her courtiers, once was heard to shout at a footman, "Bring that back!" She was so angry at the fact that by the time you just got your soup spoon in, she was going, "Well, that was very lovely." And her doctors became concerned about her obesity, and they recommended Benger's Food, which was one of these supplements. And this was a thick, milky gruel often given to invalids and the elderly. So she agreed. She took it on top of her normal diet.
They worried she wasn't going to fit on the coins.
That's a brilliant idea. Let's just get a little bit of the middle of it.
Coins got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Huge coins. I said, a whole penny for 10. The lavatory doors were vast to spend the penny. Oh, well done. Now, here's the skull of King Richard III. But what can you tell me about his table manners just by looking at it?
Well, he's very good at eating Toblerone.
Anything else you can tell? What's unusual about his teeth compared to ours?
Space for straw. That would
Space
be.
for straw. Notice your teeth, the top row
Yeah.
and the bottom row. Close your mouth, naturally.
Yeah.
Your top row,
Yeah.
overbite. We've all got an overbite. Cruelly called by Billy Crystal in When Harry Met Sally, dancing, white man's overbite. But the actual overbite, literally like that, is a recent thing in human beings. And it comes after forks, because we cut up our food. And in the days when we wrenched our food, the incisors would get smoothed down more and the teeth would fit exactly. And it shows that Richard III didn't use a fork for cutting his food, which we know, because forks were not used for transferring food to your mouth. Right up to Tudor times, you would use your hands.
So if we brought up children without knives and forks, they wouldn't develop an overbite?
No.
You know what? I'm going to try. I'm going to come back here in 21 years' time.
Call me a liar.
With
It's true, I
a
don't
really
know.
resentful-looking boy.
Well, I've got twins, so I'm going to do one. And
Brilliant. Brilliant.
And have the perfect experiment.
It is superb. Unethical, but perfect. And you can sort of show this by the difference in civilizations who developed overbites. And 1,000 years ago, you can see where Chinese aristocratic skulls have an overbite, but peasants don't. And it's when they started to use chopsticks and chop up their food, and then it spread throughout the population. So it really does, it sounds weird, but this overbite we have is an acquired characteristic because of our chopping up of food. You can just tell by looking at skulls. You just go to any graveyard, dig people up, and you'll see I'm right.
Stephen Fry told me to do it. While I'm chewing on a turtle. Really bad influence.
Yeah. So, anyway, name the traditional ingredients of kedgeree.
Well, now there's some of them on the screen.
Yeah.
Right, say right. Eggs.
I think Victoria wanted to answer this one.
Yes,
Haddock.
Oh, dear, oh, dear. You wanted that, didn't you?
What about egg?
Egg,
Rice.
yes, egg. Well, rice is a mix-up. And fish is a very recent thing to be an absolute essential of kedgeree. In fact, the Hobson-Jobson Dictionary of Anglo-Indian Words, which is one of the great books of its time, it says, in England, we find the word is often applied to a mess of recooked fish served for breakfast, but this is inaccurate. Fish is frequently eaten with kedgeree, but is no part of it. Oh. So it now tends to be flaked haddock and a bit of cream and curry powder and rice and boiled egg, and it's absolutely delicious. But I'll give you 100 points if you can name 2 traditional Italian breads.
Oh, so tempting.
Well, now, ciabatta.
Already there. Ciabatta was invented in 1982, can you believe? It's that recent.
Shut up.
Yeah,
Right,
it was
and-
an Italian baker who was worried about the threat of French baguettes. And it's the Italian for, you can redeem yourself if you know.
Baguette.
That would be too easy. No, it's not really the shape of it.
Handbag?
Well, that's closer. It's-
Slipper.
Yes! Brilliant. It was a slipper, yes. He was Arnaldo Cavallari was his name, and he was a specific invention. He called it ciabatta polesano. Polesine is a part of northern Italy. So it really is very recent. Some people claim that it was around since the 40s, but there doesn't seem to be any proof of this. The name doesn't appear before 1982. Now, what can you see coming out of your kettle as it boils?
Vapour.
Is the right answer. Not steam.
I wasn't going to say steam.
No, as if you would, because steam is...
The stuff that comes out the kettle. Oh!
Steam is invisible. It does come out of the
really?
kettle, but sometimes you see a gap. You know, you get a little gap, and then you see the vapour. And the gap is steam. It's an invisible gas. And as soon as it cools, even slightly, it turns to water vapour. And that's the bit you see. We call it steam, but it isn't. Steam is actually invisible. Isn't that interesting?
Very interesting.
Thank you. So
I
it's VI.
tell my children not to eat their food till the steam's gone. Now what am I going to say?
But, I mean, yeah, in ordinary, everyday speech, things steam and steamy are, you know, manure steams and...
I tell them not to eat manure.
Not till the steam's gone off.
I'm glad to hear it. Did you know that in 1784 there was a kettle war
Wow.
between...
It was between Morphy and Richards, wasn't it? And in the end, they joined together.
It was all fine. It was between the Dutch and the Austrians. One shot took place on the Austrian flagship. A bullet was fired by the Dutch and hit a kettle and ricocheted off, and the Austrians immediately surrendered. So it was known as the Kettle War. There you are. Well, we have to end now with a knick-knack, which I sometimes end with. This is... Oh, this is exciting. This is a remarkable substance. It's called polyethylene oxide. And it's very gloopy, and also it reacts rather excitedly under ultraviolet light. And Alan and Victoria got ultraviolet torches, and you can point them at it. And I think we might have some ultraviolet light in this
Shall
studio.
I point them now, sir?
Yes, please do. Oh, look, see? Ooh! Now, what I'm going to try and do, I'm going to stand up to do this. It's a very remarkable effect. The effect is when you pour it, if I get it at the right angle, it pulls itself out of the flask and into here. It flows uphill and out and down again. All right. There we go. It's pulling itself up, it's pulling itself up. You see what I mean? It's pulling itself up from the bottom. If you look at the top one,
wow.
it's actually flowing uphill there. Did you see that?
Wow.
And then it thins out into a little trail of snot. I'll try it again. So we just get it.
That's like it's like when you have a wee after a Barocca, isn't it?
It's exactly what it's like. Oh, goodness. It's so disgusting. Polyethylene oxide. I don't know what else.
What's it used for?
It's a very good masturbatory lubricant. Particularly in the dark.
Yeah.
All right, let's
It's a little bit awkward getting two friends to hold the
Isn't it?
torch, though.
Yeah, there we go. That's pulling itself up nicely.
So there you go.
Thank you. And thank you. Thank you, my special ultraviolet helpers. Well, on that exciting note, let's go to the scores. Oh, my actual goodness. It's really remarkable. I'm afraid, possibly because he was booby-trapped into it, in last place with -38 is Jason Manford. In a highly creditable third place with -17 is Richard Osman. It is very impressive. And in second place with -7 is Victoria Wood. But scraping into a lead by 1 point. On -6 is Alan Davis. And with thanks to Victoria, Richard, Jason and Alan, it's good night.